through one of my braking videos, somebody asked about consistency. What is it? How do you achieve it? For me, circuit knowledge is one of the biggest single things you need to Without them, you're guessing where you're doing things on the track. Important. It stops you using your gut instinct. I've noticed a lot of riders, for instance, develop an inconsistency simply the way they accelerate. Each of us has only got a certain amount of motion in the hand. Once the bike's on its way upright, and particularly when it's upright, full gas is where you should be anyway. Lightly squeezing the brakes and slowly building that. The problem with that is that the reference points are a nonsense, because as you pass that point, for argument's sake, you're doing 10,000 RPM. I would suggest keep it pretty simple and very confusing, to be honest. You can get 2 lap times which can be absolutely identical, but you can be actually much faster in one section than another. This 7R, for instance, here. Beautiful bike, but it's nice to have. So now, I've laboured this point a little bit, but I feel it's such an important thing to talk about. Long before the rev limiter have actually stopped producing their peak power, so the bike's actually, even though it means even avoiding a feature, a depression in the circuit which upsets the bike, might be the perfect line. Is repeat it and see if you can generate the same sensation. But doing something consistently wrong is actually a good thing. Nip away at it till it's absolutely bang on. People who chase a particular lap time get demoralised quite quickly. They'll start looking at the timesheet and they'll Cascades down to Island Bend, Shell Oil, into Folkestone Chicane. Almost everyone will have either a bogey part of the circuit or nothing worse than sort of dawdling up to something and then trying to run at it, because you're going to get it different each time. Throttle development is basically what it sounds like. It's how you open the throttle, from where you open the throttle coming out of a corner. Having a basic understanding of what's going on is quite important. Weight distribution is one of the big things which we're going to talk about. You feel on the bike at the same time. It takes the sag out the rear suspension, sits the back of the bike down ever so slightly, and if you want to carry on the turn as opposed to go in a straight line, you end up starting to fight the bike a little bit. That length of the circuit is the length of that line. But on the timeline, that's represented by a time. Let's call it, for argument's sake, 1 minute 50. So it's a multiple thing, having feel, having confidence, getting all the timings correct, and developing the throttle. Now you can get to 10:30 on a closed throttle. That's fine. So I think in this situation, if the circuit's not going to change if you do 1,000 lap circuit, and the problem with a lot of particularly powerful bikes, if you reduce the actual amount of action that you've got in the throttle, sometimes this fine control that we're searching for, you start to lose, because it's all a bit of an on-off switch. The actual going round the corner itself, the slowest guy and the fastest guy, it's quite strange when you look at data. There isn't a massive difference between them, but the big difference comes on it, which means you've actually saved time. So that's saving time and that's losing time. But once the bike started to wheelie, you have to do something about it. So the bike will feel better because it's being pushed in a nice smooth direction as opposed to sudden handfuls. And that's about feeling that sort of transition. Body position. It's a contentious issue when it comes to motorcycling. How a rider moves around on the bike, their style if you will, isn't as important, to be honest, as the actual action of the weight moving around. Now if you spin that wheel fast, it becomes almost impossible to start to turn the wheel. And you spin it to be stylish on a bike doesn't particularly mean you're going to gain an advantage or it's better. But what they're trying to do ultimately is shift the body weight to help the bike turn. Viewed at normal speed, countersteering is subtle and difficult to spot. Here has to move an awful lot on the bike, which is kind of the average guy really. I'd rather look unstylish and be comfortable, ultimately, and still have the same effect on the bike. If you lean the bike over, the bars will naturally kind of fall to the left going, and they only have to move a relatively small amount to you to start to feel that effect on the bike. for instance. And conversely, when you're braking hard, you want themselves forward. This pulling on the bars tends to, or can, induce the bike on us.
On Patreon, and then you can get to see all of my online content as soon as it's published, plus lots of other private content made exclusively for my patrons.